Thank you very much, Mr. President. Since this is the first time my delegation has the opportunity to speak, we would like to extend our congratulations to you and to your good country for your presidency. Excellency, the same as many other delegations, we wish to echo our voice of congratulation and support on the adoption of the Loss and Damage Fund. At the same time, my delegation wishes to draw the attention of the COP and its member states to some important considerations when it comes to operationalization and functions of the fund, in particular under the World Bank. One of the first priorities when the fund starts its function is transparency of work and addressing the financial need and requirements of all developing nations in an equal manner. Unfortunately, the World Bank, together with a number of financial mechanisms, which the World Bank is their hosts, in their function during previous decades, have followed a political approach in consideration and approval of financing of projects belonging to a number of developing nations, including my own. And accordingly, our projects have been explicitly ignored by them. Therefore, we should ensure that the new fund in its function shall equally address all projects and requests for funds, and all developing countries, far from any political motive and influence, shall have unimpeded access to its financial support. Further, the dust and sandstorms as a critical weather event and significant impacts on many countries and regions should also be included in the scope and areas of activities of this fund. And accordingly, this fund shall finance those projects submitted to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iran. Now I would like to invite Zambia to take the floor. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, you recall that at COP27, one of the measures of success we put as Africa was to convince the world that the Loss and Damage Fund was necessary. Coming to COP28 here in Dubai, we wanted to measure success to see whether the Loss and Damage Fund will be established and that it will become operational. To see, Your Excellency, that this has not only been established, accepted to be established, but that developed countries have already started putting in money, obviously to the tune of more than $200 million in the first 20 minutes of acceptance. I think this is a good statement of intent that this world means business, and that the developed world and the developing world will start building that trust necessary to ensure that climate action is enhanced. We therefore call upon all the other developed countries to put in more money, because the fund has to be established and established at scale. Mr. President, we believe that the small difficulties we had, one of them is where the host of the fund, various mechanisms, are peripheral issues. To accept that the fund be established, the framework be established, and to see money flowing in means that we should start moving, and moving as quickly as possible. This is a trust we need. We encourage the developed countries to put more funds to ensure that no country remains behind. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Zambia, for your kind words. And like we promised, this is going to be a different COP with a different presidency, very much centered around action and implementation. And I think us being able to achieve this historic moment today is a great and a clear and a unique demonstration of that commitment. Allow me now to ask Norway. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Norway welcomes and strongly supports the decision we have adopted today on loss and damage funding arrangements and the new fund. This decision sets a clear path towards strengthening funding arrangements, including through the fund. The next steps in making the fund operational will still require a lot of work by its board, and will therefore encourage early nominations of board members. Mr. President, while celebrating the progress made, Norway is very disappointed that we could not agree on specific language in the governing instrument for the fund to take a human rights-based approach. However, we fully expect that the board will ensure that the fund operates in a way that respects and promotes human rights. We also fully expect that the board early on will engage stakeholders, including youth, women, and indigenous people in its proceedings and decision-making. Mr. President, we welcome the announcements of financial contributions made today, and I'm pleased to say that Norway will announce a contribution to the fund during the World Climate Action Summit. And we look forward to further announcements in the coming days. But it is also important, Mr. President, that the board, once it is established, initiates an initial resource mobilization as soon as possible in order to encourage further contributions from parties and from a wide variety of sources in order to maximize financial input to the fund. We should also enhance work on how to ensure other sources of financial input to the fund, including innovative sources of finance. Lastly, Mr. President, while we can celebrate our decision on the funding arrangements and the new fund and its support, let us not forget the reason why loss and damage is now increasingly a challenge globally for us all. We know that we are not on the right path toward the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement, and that devastating effects of climate change will just worsen if we do not strengthen global efforts to urgently reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So let us make sure, Mr. President, that this COP delivers not only hope for support to those most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, but that it also delivers a strong message that we collectively are taking steps towards strengthened mitigation action and keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Norway. May I ask India, please? India, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Firstly, allow me to congratulate UAE Presidency and the UNFCCC Secretariat for the outstanding arrangement done for COP28. We thank you for the excellent hospitality. India strongly supports the decision to establish the Loss and Damage Fund. India engaged constructively in the meeting of the Transitional Committee and also appreciates the work of the Transitional Committee. It is important to note the decision on operationalization of Loss and Damage Fund will be a landmark decision. We congratulate COP Presidency for this important decision. I thank you very much, Mr. President, for this achievement.
Thank you, India. May I now request Colombia to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Since it is the first time that my delegation takes the floor, I would like to convey our best wishes to you, Excellency, the incoming presidency, and reiterate the support of Colombia for a successful conference of the parties. I would like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to the co-chairs, Uti and Richard, who drove us to reach a successful agreement, and my fellow colleagues, members of the TC, for their engagement and high spirits, which made this possible. Loss and damage has been at the heart of the political discussions for climate justice since the creation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, dating back to a 1991 proposal by the small island nation. Vulnerable countries, G77, have fought for over 30 years for loss and damage to be reflected in the structure of the climate regime, formal decisions, finance mechanisms, negotiating agendas, and in general as part of the formal systemic response to address climate change. It is indisputable that mitigation and adaptation action and support are key to avert and minimize climate impacts and risks, and reduce the losses and damages frontline communities are facing. However, the evidence and the science are also clear that loss and damage is no longer only a risk, but a life reality, especially for many communities around the world, including Colombia. After 3 decades of advocacy, an international response was achieved based on justice, responsibility, and the fact that mitigation and adaptation cannot avoid the current and future losses and damages generated by climate impacts. Nations have failed to adequately address mitigation efforts at a global level, and we cannot continue on that path. It is clear that those who are bearing the burden of the cost of loss and damage are the most vulnerable people with the fewest resources, as well as the economies of developing countries overburdened with debt. Today, we celebrate and join our voices for the adoption of the TC recommendations. The operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund under the financial mechanism of the Convention is the appropriate response of the UNFCCC, independently of other initiatives occurring outside of the Convention. While the outcome of the TC is far from perfect, Colombia considers that the agreed final package is sufficient to safeguard access to the fund's resources by all developing countries and its operationalization in an effective manner, leaving no one behind. Pledges should be commensurate with the scale of the needs for loss and damage, which is already costing hundreds of billions of US dollars a year. We need to scale up quickly to make up for 30 years of lost time. Pledges and focus should be on addressing loss and damage. We welcome the pledges made by many countries, and we hope more will come. We are today, no doubt, at the turning point where losses and damage is, with justice paving its way to becoming the third pillar of climate action and support, together with mitigation and adaptation. Addressing loss and damage has a well-deserved place at the very heart of the global response to threat of climate change, both under the Convention and the Paris Agreement in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Colombia. Allow me just... I have a growing list of speakers, and the SPS need to start their sessions immediately after the close of the governing body's meeting. I therefore will allow to continue with the requests I have, but I kindly request that delegates to keep their statements brief to a maximum of 2 minutes, please. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Switzerland. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At the outset, let me congratulate you for your election. I would also like to thank the United Arab Emirates for their warm welcome here. I'm delivering this statement on behalf of the Environmental Integrity Group, comprising Georgia, Liechtenstein, Mexico, Monaco, the Republic of Korea, and Switzerland. The EIG appreciates very much the hard work achieved by the Transitional Committee. We welcome the early adoption. This is a strong signal of our commitment, a first major milestone for this COP, and a landmark decision. While we are optimistic to see its adoption today, we note that some difficult issues are being postponed to the board of the fund, such as scope or on allocation. We look forward to the swift operationalization of the fund that ensures a human rights approach. We trust that the board will be able to take good decisions to ensure effective action for benefiting those people most in need at the front line of climate change, and the coherence and complementarity of the fund with existing funding arrangements to avert, minimize and address loss and damage. Last but not least, we want to take up the call of you, Mr. President, that we have to strive at this COP with all our energy to keep the 1.5-degree objective in reach, as this is the most effective way to minimize loss and damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. I'd like to now invite Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And once again, allow me to join others in congratulating you on your election. And we have every confidence in your ability and that of your team to lead our work to an outstanding conclusion this year, building on successes of previous COPs. Mr. President, just over a year ago, we were in a very different place when it came to loss and damage. We were all coming out of the Bonn session with a big fight over inclusion of the very issue of funding of loss and damage on the agenda. It was no small task to get the issue on the agenda of COP27, but even exceeding all of our expectations was actually having a decision on funding and funding arrangements and a fund for loss and damage. I take the floor at this moment, in fact, to acknowledge the incredible work done by a number of people that allowed us to be in this position right now. First and foremost, all of the delegations that huddled with us into late hours of the night in Sharm el-Sheikh and showed tremendous flexibility despite very divergent political positions on the issue, but they all came together at the end of the day, allowed it to go on the agenda, and then came together to allow the adoption of that historical landmark decision. And then the work was not done. We still had the TC, and we had two outstanding co-chairs who led the work, and everyone who was in attendance attested to their central pivotal role in leading the work. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the support provided by the Secretariat. They work behind the scenes, but they really are the backbone of the process, and great thanks on behalf of the outgoing Egyptian COP presidency to them for all the hard work they've done. But lastly, to conclude, let me say thanks to you, the UAE, for bringing this all together here in Dubai, for having this very brilliant idea of starting off and giving us all a good vibe and a good moment to start our work on other issues. Lastly, I think our success here goes way beyond just the very central, critical issue of funding loss and damage. It is a testament to the ability of the community, international community, working collectively to come on together and reach agreement and show that multilateralism is still alive and doing well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Egypt, for your kind words and your intervention. I must, though, say that it has all started in Egypt, and if it wasn't for your persistence, determination, commitment, and follow-up throughout the year, this would not have been possible. We thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it. Allow me now to invite Vanuatu, please. Vanuatu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. As the loss and damage mechanism has at long last been operationalized and adopted here in Dubai at COP28, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Transitional Committee for their work. My sincere gratitude to the developed countries that have pledged funds to operationalize this very important mechanism, which my country, Vanuatu, among others, brought up 8 years ago. Vanuatu is among the most vulnerable countries in the world. This is personal for me. Imagine twin cyclones landing in a week in your country, or a series of severe tropical cyclones in a year. The pledges mark an auspicious start for countries like mine, where vulnerability and loss and damage is a harsh reality today. We are looking forward to growing the fund to meet the huge challenges that my country and many others are facing in the age of climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please invite Philippines? Philippines, you have the floor.
Shukran, Sid Reis. At the outset, since this is the first time that we take the floor, we'd like to thank you and congratulate you for your adept chairing of the meeting. We would also like to congratulate the UAE Presidency, the Egyptian Presidency, the members and advisors of the Transitional Committee, the G77 in China, and the Asia-Pacific Group for facilitating the work, and indeed for all of the partners for this landmark approval of the recommendations of the TC. The Philippines itself was part of the TC, and we are aware of the difficulties that arose before we came to this historic conclusion. The decision for the Philippines' Excellency comes at the most important and opportune time. The Philippines being most at-risk country to climate change. 10 years ago, Excellency, the Philippines was hit by Typhoon Haiyan, and the loss and damage sustained was unbearable. Thousands were silenced forever. And today we take to this floor, speaking not just as one country, but together, clearly, unequivocally, united with a decisive action. The operationalization of the L&D Fund is a historic move forward. It is proof positive of what we can do as an international community if we put our brains together and work together. We can move something from being divisive and transform it into something that's truly unifying. But as we celebrate Excellency, let us remember loss and damage is at the latter end of the phenomenon spectrum. We have to realize and remember the important work that also needs to be done for adaptation mitigation efforts to be scaled up. We are grateful for the pledges from our partner countries. We hope that this will assist us, and not just the Philippines, but other at-risk countries. What we are doing here, Excellency, is that we're moving forward and working together in moving and transforming countries from states of fragility to agility. And what's more important is that we're working together to make sure that the narrative of climate change and its impacts on peoples and nations becomes a narrative of turning victims to victor. And on this occasion, the Philippines will continue to work very, very hard to reach these goals. And before I end, maybe also thank the UNFCCC Secretariat for the hard work that they've done. Again, we hope that the voice becomes stronger, the unity becomes stronger for the good of the entire world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the outset, we want to congratulate you for your leadership, for taking up this very important role in this critical moment. Ghana, as the chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, played a very critical role last year in Egypt, trying to campaign about the essence of, first of all, having an agenda adopted as the Egyptian presidency just articulated, and then also articulated through a young lady, 11-year-old girl, who delivered a sterling statement to the world leaders about the essence of having this fund established. And so today we are very happy to see this success being made and then being celebrated by all. We therefore encourage all parties, especially developing country parties, to actually continue the leadership that has been shown today, so that the objective of the fund to deliver success for vulnerable communities that around the world can actually achieve this objective. We want to take this opportunity to thank everybody and then also say that we are ready to work with your presidency. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ghana. I'd like to invite Peru.
Señor Presidente, distinguidos delegados y delegadas, primero que nada, señor Presidente, queremos extender nuestras felicitaciones por su designación como presidente de la COP y asimismo agradecer a la presidencia saliente egipcia por su liderazgo. Señor Presidente, el día de hoy hemos sido testigos y partícipes de cómo el trabajo conjunto nos ayuda a lograr resultados históricos para nuestras poblaciones, en especial para los más vulnerables, como son las mujeres indígenas. Señor Presidente, ahora es cuando recién empieza nuestro trabajo y tenga la seguridad que el Perú estará acompañando este proceso bajo su liderazgo. Estamos seguros que este momento de alegría y logros nos acompañará durante las siguientes 2 semanas para alcanzar nuestros objetivos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Senegal, please. Senegal, you have the floor.
Okay. Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'abord, permettez-moi, au nom du groupe des pays les moins avancés, 46 pays, de vous féliciter pour votre élection et pour votre leadership que vous avez su montrer ce matin, cet après-midi. Nous vous félicitons pour cette générosité et cette solidarité globale que vous avez fait preuve en cet historique moment d'adoption du Fonds sur les pertes et dommages. Nous vous félicitons pour cette humanité que vous avez mis en face de nous, montrant que nous sommes tous conscients que nous devons changer la façon de faire dans le futur, la façon de prendre en charge les besoins des communautés vulnérables face au changement climatique, particulièrement pour les pays les moins avancés et les États insulaires. Nous tenons à remercier, au nom du groupe, le comité de transition, le secrétariat et votre équipe pour le travail ardu mené pendant ce processus pour répondre à cette demande de justice que les communautés attendent de nous. Nous voudrons dire que ce fonds ne devra pas simplement reproduire les modèles de financement habituels, mais plutôt garantir de nouveaux financements accessibles, additionnels, adéquats et substantiels sous forme de subventions pour nous permettre de redresser, de reconstruire et de réhabiliter nos pays suite à des événements extrêmes climatiques et des événements à évolution lente. Nous espérons que les engagements importants pris aujourd'hui sous votre leadership vont continuer demain et pendant toute cette période de la COP à Dubaï pour avoir une capitalisation adéquate du fonds pertes et dommages pour que cette année, nous voyions ce fonds répondre effectivement aux besoins des communautés impactées. Merci.
May I ask Maldives, please? Maldives.
Thank you, Mr. President. As this is the first time that the Maldives is taking the floor, I take the opportunity to thank you, Excellency, for the warm hospitality and to congratulate you on the excellent work conducted under your presidency. The recent significant decision reflects a ray of hope for genuine multilateralism and global dedication. Our journey in this session commences with the historic achievement as witnessed by the adoption and initiation of the operationalization of the fund during the opening of COP28. We place our trust in all to effectively address the need of loss and damage for vulnerable countries like the Maldives. We commend the diligent efforts of the Transitional Committee, whose recommendations have given rise to this crucial fund, particularly vital for nations such as Maldives grappling with the diverse effects of climate change. Acknowledging the pledges made by numerous parties today, we call upon developed countries to put in funds that are necessary to establish the fund at scale. This also marks a pivotal moment for small island development states which have endured economic and non-economic losses for decades. The Maldives has been an advocate for this cause since the very beginning of this process. In the interest of time, I will keep my remarks brief, but emphasize our plea to keep the 1.5 alive. I thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the EU, please? EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. To add to the momentum in the room today, I am pleased to confirm a pledge of an aggregate number from the EU and its member states, including Germany, of at least 225 million euros to the fund. As I indicated earlier, the detail of this and the further pledges, including support for funding arrangements for loss and damage, will be confirmed by our leaders those days. Thank you.
Way to go, EU. Thank you very much. Thank you. I still have 3 more requests. Can I invite Dominican Republic, please?
Yes. Sí, buenas tardes, señor presidente. Es la primera vez que República Dominicana toma la palabra. Por eso deseamos expresarle los mejores deseos en la enorme responsabilidad que usted ha asumido al presidir la COP por un año. y particularmente el hecho de que a usted le ha tocado presidir en un día que es de satisfacción y regocijo para todos los países del mundo. Al mismo tiempo, deseo agradecer las atenciones que nosotros, todos los que estamos aquí, hemos recibido del gobierno de los Emiratos Árabes Unidos. Señor presidente, el poeta nacional de la República Dominicana, Pedro Mir, dijo en uno de sus poemas más conocidos que la República Dominicana estaba colocada en el mismo trayecto del Sol. Pero, además de estar en el trayecto del Sol, estamos también colocados en la ruta de los huracanes tropicales. Y eso nos hace uno de los países también más vulnerables ante los devastadores efectos del cambio climático. Por eso, la adopción de las conclusiones del Comité de Transición del Mecanismo y Fondo de Daños y Pérdidas es un evento histórico y trascendental. Por eso, nosotros agradecemos los aportes iniciales de su país y también los de los demás países que han anunciado hoy la asignación de recursos para el fondo. Igualmente, invitamos a los demás, a otros, para que sigan ese ejemplo y que ese fondo de daños y pérdidas se constituya en un instrumento efectivo para que los países no tengamos que escoger, como dijo usted en su discurso inicial, que no tener que escoger entre utilizar fondos para la reconstrucción, es decir, para la adaptación y dejando de lado el crecimiento económico. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I see Samuel. Samuel, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me firstly congratulate you for the assumption of the presidency of COP28. And also for the hard work in bringing us to this historical juncture today with respect to the issue that is of critical importance to the small island development states, the Loss and Damage Fund. As I'm sure you know, financing for loss and damage is a notion that the Alliance of Small Island States brought to this process 30 years ago. And we are extremely pleased that as a global community, we have finally reached this goal. This day is doubly auspicious due to the immediate commencement of the capitalization process. AOSIS also looks forward to the speedy finalization of the governing board members before we leave Dubai. May I thank the UAE through you, Mr. President, for making the first significant pledge, as well as our other partners. This is an encouraging beginning, but there is much work ahead of us. We have left the starting line. However, we look forward to working with you and all our colleagues for swift authorization of the fund. Congratulations once again to you, Mr. President, and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. I see Chile. Chile, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Quisiéramos, como delegación, unirnos a las felicitaciones que ha recibido por su nombramiento, pero también por el importante éxito que hemos tenido al inicio de esta sesión. Chile está particularmente satisfecho con este inicio de la COP y particularmente también satisfecho por las contribuciones que hemos tenido el honor de hacer en este proceso. Chile como miembro del Comité de Transición y también en nuestro rol como cofacilitadores a través de nuestra ministra de Medio Ambiente durante la COP27 en apoyo a la presidencia de Egipto. Hemos sido honrados con la posibilidad de hacer estas contribuciones y queremos seguir trabajando justamente en el fortalecimiento de esta nueva dimensión de la acción climática que nos hace necesario mirar a los más vulnerables y atender a sus necesidades. Es también una demostración del éxito del multilateralismo y pensamos que este éxito debe proyectarse en el resto del trabajo de esta conferencia. Las pérdidas y daños son necesarias atender en todos los países, en todas las circunstancias, considerando la crisis climática que estamos viviendo. Y es urgente que avancemos en esa discusión con el fin de atender a los países y a las comunidades que son particularmente vulnerables a los efectos del cambio climático. Quisiéramos simplemente felicitar a la presidencia de los Emiratos Árabes y agradecerle por este exitoso y auspicioso inicio de esta conferencia y cuenten con el apoyo y la constante contribución de Chile para poder seguir avanzando en este sentido. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chile. Solomon Islands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Solomon Islands welcomes the decision taken today to operationalize the L&D Fund. We congratulate you on getting this historical decision through on the first day of the COP. We also would like to express our gratitude to the co-chairs of the TC and its members and advisors for their commitment to the groundwork that culminated in the decision taken today. We also would like to acknowledge and appreciate those that have made contributions even today. We hope that the spirit of cooperation and commitment to operationalize the L&D Fund is also translated into reducing emissions, and also a similar momentum be taken for adaptation. We thank you.
Thank you, Solomon Islands. That concludes the list of speakers. Together, these pledges demonstrate our commitment to those who are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. This is the spirit I want us to take forward into the next 2 weeks of negotiations. We have no time to waste. We must heed the science. We must deliver a historical outcome here in Dubai. Thank you, delegates. With this, I declare the first meeting of the CMA adjourned.
and Technology Advice, SEPTA, and the subsidiary body for implementation, SBI. And SEPTA, I will also take up agenda item 2 and present the SEPTA agenda for adoption. We then proceed with launching together or work on joint SB agenda items. Then the SBI will launch work on agenda items related only to SBI. This will be followed by the SEPTA launching the work that is exclusive to the SEPTA agenda. After we have concluded the launching of work, as earlier announced by the COP Presidency, the 5 bodies will reconvene in a joint plenary to hear opening statements by groups of parties, individual parties, intergovernmental organizations, and non-governmental observer organizations. The order of the item be taken up during this plenary session meeting convened together has been shown on the screen. With this explanation, I would like to begin with item 1 of the SEPTA supplementary provisional agenda, opening of the session. I hereby open the 59th session of the subsidiary body of the Scientific and Technology Advice. Excellencies, dear colleagues, it is indeed a pleasure to see all of you here in Dubai. I'm also pleased to welcome the SEPTA Bureau, Natalie Flores Gonzalez from the Dominican Republic, who was elected as the SEPTA Vice Chair at the June session this year. Sita Casawil from Gabon continue as the SEPTA Rapporteur. I also would like to take the opportunity to express my gratitude to the City of Dubai and the United Arab Emirates for hosting this important climate conference. Dear friends and colleagues, it has been 6 months since we met in Bonn, where we made significant progress. We are now called to build on this progress and further accelerate our efforts to address climate change, which is more urgent than ever, as the latest science has once again confirmed. Dear delegates, I trust that we can start our work here in the spirit of urgency and constructive collaboration to reach the outcomes we need from this session and to pave the way for a successful conference. We will take up the items as displayed on the screen and as I just outlined it a few minutes ago. Can I take it that the SEPTA agreed with this approach? It is so decided. Thank you very much. Let me now hand over to the SBI Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, I hereby open the 59th session of the subsidiary body for implementation. It is also my pleasure to join you all here in Dubai and to be sitting next to my very dear friend, Harry. Let me welcome the SBI Bureau, Gonzalo Weichel from Chile, who was elected as the SBI Vice Chair at the June session this year, and Aysan Torpanci from Turkey, who continues to be SBI Rapporteur until her successor is elected at this session. At the outset, let me allow to make a few reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world in which we have reached the goals of the Paris Agreement, where smart and transformative solutions have been found to adapt to climate change, and the humanity is focusing on making conscious, sustainable choices. The good news is that such a world is still within reach, but only if we take bold decisions today. The future of humanity hangs in the balance, and the path we choose in response to the climate crisis will define the course of our shared destiny. Over 100,000 delegates registered to meet here in Dubai in COP28. It is a chance for each one of us to take those bold decisions, decisions that aspire to a green and sustainable world. We are looking forward to COP28 for answers. But we have to remember that COP28 is all of us, each one of us. So what we deliver here has to be transformative in nature. We have to deliver on multiple fronts, and we have to catalyze crucial global momentum to address gaps in climate action through the global stocktake. The course correction, quote unquote, that we are aiming for is something that, one, keeps the 1.5 temperature goal within reach by increasing ambition and addressing the emissions gap. Two, build on the good news earlier this afternoon when we established the Loss and Damage Fund and even had pledges done, and make sure that this is able to raise additional, predictable and adequate finance. Three, launch the work program on just transition pathways, enabling parties to assess and scale up ways to achieve Paris Agreement goals in an equitable manner. Four, deliver a strong outcome on finance. And five, achieve global resilience through a clear and measurable global goal on adaptation. Let us seize this moment with unwavering optimism to enact change and build a world where the ambition to address climate change is as vast as the challenge itself. Thank you. Let me now invite you to turn to sub-agenda item 2, organizational matters. Item 2A, adoption of the agenda. I would now like to refer to document SBI/2023/11/Add2, which contains a supplementary provisional agenda for SBI 59. As you know, the COP28 Presidency has held intensive consultations with the parties on the adoption of the agendas of the different bodies at this session. You heard earlier today from the President during the first plenary meeting of the COP the understanding reached during these consultations regarding the adoption of the agendas of the COP, CMP, CMA, which applies mutatis mutandis to the agenda of the SBI and Substa. With this understanding, I propose that the supplementary provisional agenda as contained in document SBI/2023/11/Add2 be adopted without the following items: item 21, 22, 23, and 24, and that the subsequent items be renumbered accordingly. May I invite parties to adopt the supplementary provisional agenda contained in SBI/2023/11/Add2 as orally amended, namely without items 21, 22, 23, and 24. I hear no objections. It is so decided. Thank you, colleagues. Dear delegates, as outlined at the beginning, I will take up sub-items 2B and 2E of the SBI agenda before handing back to Substa Chair, who will proceed on the adoption of the Substa agenda.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. And first of all, thank you very much for your patience and apologies for the delay. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the opening press conference of COP28. I'm here with the newly elected COP President, His Excellency Dr. Sultan Jaber, Executive Secretary Simon Steele, Hana Al-Hashimi, UAE COP Lead Negotiator, and last but not least, Ambassador Majid Al-Suwaidi, the COP28 Director General. We will hear a few remarks and then we have time for a few questions. Over to you, Executive Secretary, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. And as he started, apologies for the late start to this press conference. And I want to start by just acknowledging the positive start to the opening of this COP. And I want to commend the UAE Presidency for its leadership, as well as the previous Egyptian COP Presidency. Loss and damage has been a central priority of the UN's climate efforts. So it's been a privilege for UN climate change to facilitate the work of the Transitional Committee and working very closely with the presidencies. And the work within the Transitional Committee, we heard from the two co-chairs, we believe all parties left there sufficiently happy. There was the discussions were challenging. This is 30 years worth of discussion, which concluded in Sharm el-Sheikh last year with that historic decision to establish the fund and funding arrangements. But the challenge was how, within a one-year period, with just 5 meetings of the committee, to actually work out the details and iron out the details of how to operationalize it, and not just operationalizing it, but also to start that seed capital for it, which we were all there to witness. So today's news on loss and damage gives this UN climate conference a running start. All governments and their negotiators must use this momentum to deliver truly ambitious outcomes here in Dubai. We must keep our eyes on the prize, and every minute counts. So I want you to think of those people as the negotiations take place. And that's what energizes me, and that's what inspires me as we support this process. So when the going gets tough, I urge the negotiating teams to move beyond traditional negotiating positions and to find solutions and pathways forward. And as I said in my opening speech, to turn those badges around the necks of each of the delegates into badges of honor, and as they represent the millions of people that they are working for. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. Loss and damage is just one of the negotiating tracks. But the spirit in which parties have engaged as we ended the pre-sessional week, where negotiators were engaging constructively, where the Secretariat met with all parties, all negotiating groups. And what is consistent across all of those negotiating groups and all of the parties that we've met is that willingness to start these negotiations with a constructive and engaged outlook. So we need to work and build on what we have seen today. as we work through the 12, 13 days that are ahead of us. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Secretary. We first go to His Excellency COP28 President. You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Allow me first to start by saying how pleased I am to have this opportunity to welcome you to the United Arab Emirates, to Dubai, and to COP28. I'm sure most of you feel what I actually feel. I came into this task with a full understanding of what it takes to manage this process. I took this task with humility and with a deep sense of responsibility and a great sense of urgency. And that's why we have approached this task in a completely different and an unconventional way. The extraordinary effort that have been put into this task, I must say, it's paying off. Why so and how so? The fact that we have been able to achieve such significant milestone in the first day of this COP is unprecedented. This is historic. The fact that we were able to get the agenda voted and agreed on without any delay for those who have been involved in previous COPs, this is just unprecedented. The fact that we've been able to deliver what was promised in Sharm el-Sheikh, the fact that we've been able to activate, operationalize, and pass the threshold that have been associated with the establishment with this fund is historic and is a unique, unprecedented achievement. So how do I feel? I feel excited, determined, and I'm sure most of you feel the positivity, the optimistic environment and ambience that we are all experiencing here at this very place. I have been to 12 COPs before. Each one had its own unique proposition. I must say though, never ever did I feel this level of excitement and this level of enthusiasm among all sincere and genuine parties involved in this discussion. Those who have come here to help advance this agenda in a way that is meaningful, that is true, and that is real, and to help address it by providing real solutions for the real world. I must say, this is not a small achievement. In fact, it is a historic achievement, and it is a very good start for this very important and consequential COP. Now, the real work only begins. And like I said in my opening remarks, I am determined to demonstrate that this COP is a different COP, and this presidency is a different presidency. We are laser focused on keeping 1.5 within reach, and we are laser focused on delivering the maximum, highest ambition in response to the global stocktake. And you know that this is not going to be a small task. And we all know that the next 2 weeks are not going to be easy 2 weeks. Yet, because of the commitment and the dedication and the hard work of the Secretariat and the COP28 team, and how this is being met and matched by many interested parties, I am more confident than ever that we will deliver an unprecedented result. That means real solutions and real outcomes to help address this global challenge. We need to start thinking differently about this COP process. We can no longer only judge on ink being put on paper. We should always question how executable and how implementable and how actionable these decisions and these declarations and these agreements are. And that is what we are focused on. Our main focus is going to continue to be on translating visions and aspirations and declarations and decisions into real practical actions that will make a difference. Today, like I said, the threshold was 200 to establish and operationalize this fund. We reached north of $420 million only in the first hour. And I know that over the next couple of days, many more pledges and many more commitments are going to be made by different heads of states and different heads of governments. And I must here say that this would not have been possible if it wasn't for the hard work and the dedication of the Transitional Committee members, Egypt, the Secretariat, and many relevant parties and stakeholders. And I also would like to thank Germany, UK, EU, US, and Japan for their pledges during the plenary earlier today. Getting this done and over the line is a clear demonstration of how committed we are and how our approach is different. When we commit, we deliver, and that is going to be the DNA of COP28. I thank you all for being here, and I want you to know I will be working hand in hand with everybody, with everyone. I'll be rubbing shoulders with every party, and I will be rolling up my sleeves myself, engaging and helping address this challenge and delivering real, actionable results. I thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ambassador Majid.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Sultan Jaber. I think I would like to welcome you all to the UAE, and it's great to see so many friends who we've engaged with over the course of this year. And I hope I know I speak for Dr. Sultan when I say that the success of this first day of COP is really thanks to the leadership of the UAE, and the reflection we have today is thanks to the guidance that we've received from them, who've always been pushing us to be as ambitious as possible, and it reflects their approach to everything that they do in the UAE in terms of they don't just talk about it, they deliver it. And the opening ceremony of COP28, you saw our COP President not just talk about it, but him deliver results from day one, and that's something that I certainly am very proud to be a part of. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Majid Al-Suwaidi. I'm the Director General of COP28. I'll be engaging with you over the course of the coming days, hopefully answering many of your questions and working with you to make sure that we get the news out to the world about the exciting things that you're going to see coming in the coming days. I hope that we can all get to know each other, and please come and talk to me when you get a chance. I've been in diplomacy for many years. I was previously the ambassador to Spain, Andorra, and the Vatican, but also was lead negotiator for the UAE up to Paris, from Durban to Paris. I've had the honor to work in many different missions, but I think that this year has been one of my favorite, getting to be with the minister, traveling around the world, engaging with people, talking to young people, indigenous communities, youth groups, NGOs. We haven't left anybody that we haven't spoken to, and I feel that the agenda, the program, and the actions that you'll see at COP28 reflect that. We need strong results from the negotiated outcomes, but also an action agenda that engages both parties and non-parties, like civil society, business communities, and other groups to catalyze progress here at COP28. Before I start, I want to take a moment to congratulate Dr. Sultan Jaber on his official appointment as COP28. I haven't said that yet. President, and we've known each other for many years, and it's a very proud moment for me. He founded Masdar, and he's chairman of that. He's transformed our renewable energy landscape in this country. He's been our special envoy. He's been to many COPs, many of which I've been with him, where he's driven us to be as ambitious as possible, and I know that he's going to deliver real action and real results at this COP, and I have full confidence in him. This COP has to be an inflection point, not just a checkpoint. This is a responsibility that we as a COP presidency take very seriously. We want ambitious actions that course correct, and the hard work is ongoing, has been going on for many, many months, and we know the real test starts today. Tomorrow, the World Climate Action Summit will open, where leaders will deliver decisive direction for decision on the global stocktake so that we can raise our ambition, close the gaps to 2030, and unite and act and deliver. Over the 2 days, we will have critical sessions on transforming climate finance, on adaptation, on mitigation, and so much more, and I hope that you'll be there for those. During these sessions, we're confident that we will also see a host of exciting announcements being made, and I look forward to being able to reflect on them with you in greater detail in the coming days. Our COP will be fully inclusive. This means that we will engage parties, but also other groups traditionally left out of the room, including youth, indigenous people, and others, and we'll be advancing progress across a host of important issues as we go forward. On the intersection of climate change and conflict, as well as understanding how technology can catalyze progress to decarbonize our world. We'll be hosting the first local climate action summit in partnership with Bloomberg, and in recognition of the critical role of local leaders play in reducing emissions, addressing climate risk, and supercharging national efforts to move further and faster on climate progress. And the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum, which will seek to unlock private capital and catalyze the innovation required to meet our climate ambitions. After the World Climate Action Summit, we will begin our 2-week thematic program. As you've already heard, we conducted the most extensive listening tour of any presidency to help create this year's action agenda. We engaged all stakeholders and listened to all perspectives in that process. We're doing things differently here in Dubai. We want everyone at the table because everyone is needed to deliver the game-changing results and the good news that the world needs. Each day of our thematic agenda is underpinned by 4 cross-cutting themes to support delivery, which are technology and innovation, inclusion, frontline communities, and of course, finance. And for the first time, we're putting issues like trade and health at the heart of this agenda. In the build-up to COP, we've already seen significant progress and critical momentum, but now we must turn this momentum into actionable outcomes. We have no time for polarization and arguments. It is time for solidarity, partnerships, and action. The message here today is clear. We're confident about what we can achieve at this COP, and I would be honored to hand over to my colleague, Hannah El-Hashimi, our chief negotiator and one of the brilliant young people we have working on our team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, for the very kind introduction, and congratulations, Mabruk Doctor, on your nomination as President of the COP. It's been an absolute honor to have worked with you on the bid to get here. Hard to believe that 3 years ago that we'd be sitting here today having the fastest adoption, I think, of an agenda, the smoothest one that allowed people to get a good night's sleep, as well as an incredible historic capitalization of a fund that we didn't even know would exist 3 years ago. So thank you, sir, for your leadership. Thank you, Simon, for your partnership. And to all present today and watching online, thank you for your commitment, for hoping towards what can be achieved, and your commitment to supporting us in working towards that. Allow me to also issue you a warm welcome to the United Arab Emirates and to Dubai. We are thrilled to have you all here, to have your passion, to have your excitement together with us to deliver what we hope will be a truly monumental COP. Let me perhaps say a little bit about my role as lead negotiator. One of the most fulfilling parts of that is to lead a team of young Emiratis, two-thirds of which are women, two-thirds of which are youth, who are with diverse backgrounds coming from engineering, legal, civil servant backgrounds, but all committed to multilateralism, to facilitating a strong outcome, to working with parties and defining success, working towards that, and working towards delivery to meet the gap that we have to by 2030. They're also emerging leaders in the global fight against climate change, and I'm very proud of having built that capacity with all colleagues and under the leadership, of course, of their excellencies and His Excellency Adnan as well, who you all know well too, and excited to see where they go from here in working with the world in delivering all of this. Of course, we'll be working with parties and this week supporting the SB chairs in making progress across the technical negotiations. I would like to highlight one that's very close to my heart, having co-chaired an early contact group on this, and this is the global stocktake. I truly believe that this is an opportunity for a new era of climate action. And I think His Excellency Dr. Sultan expects no less. But as he said, we also have heard from parties a clear political will to make the most of this opportunity, to build on it so that we can slash emissions, we can build resilience, and we can ensure support for developing countries in this transition. His Excellency Majid has elaborated how we're going to use the next 2 weeks on that very well. But perhaps I'll speak a little bit about what we have to do on the technical side. With more than 160 items on the agenda, it was very critical for us to get this agenda adopted fast. And so there were over 40 consultations in the last month with all regional groups and parties to be able to get here. And we're very grateful for the flexibility shown by all parties, working closely with His Excellency Adnan, our head of delegation, in order to get to a point where we have a timely adoption. The other critical news item today is, of course, the capitalization, not just operationalization, of the Loss and Damage Fund and funding arrangements. Having had the honor of serving on the Transitional Committee on behalf of the incoming presidency, I can tell you that that was a group of people that were determined to see how we could ensure that this process demonstrates that multilateralism works, that when parties come together, and after 30 years of arguing of the definition of loss and damage, let alone how it is that we would address it, that when we've said that we're going to operationalize this thing in 1 year, that we can do that. And we've also seen the willingness today that I think exceeded expectations in many ways of ensuring that this is not an empty bank account. That was a challenge that Dr. Sultan set to parties back in June, I believe, and that has really, really come through. So very encouraged by that and hopeful that this translates into the negotiations over the next couple of weeks. Very keen to build on the momentum, to support the subsidiary body chairs as much as we can this week. It's my hope that they can get pretty much all of the work out of the way and we can celebrate together next week. But let's see what we can do. And let's deliver this COP together. Everyone has a role to play, and the time for delivery is now. So we look forward to your questions, of course, but really to your important role in bringing the story of what we do here to the world and ensuring that we're empowering everyone to be a part of this new era for global climate action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time now for a few questions. Let me start, gentlemen, second row. the next colleague. Could you please identify yourself, who you're working with, and wait for the microphone? Yes. Thank you.
Ivan Kuron of AFP. Dr. Sultan, congratulations on the loss and damage on the agenda. In your speech, you mentioned the inclusion of the role of fossil fuels. On that particular point, in your recent discussions with parties, have you seen any movement towards a compromise on that particular matter?
Well, first I must say I was very much encouraged by the initial responses I got, and that actually even motivated me to aim to raise more ambition, especially when it comes to the inclusion of oil and gas and fossil fuel in general. My invitation today to all parties is an invitation I extended a few months ago in multiple platforms to many different stakeholders, where I told them clearly, we want this COP to be a different COP. We want this COP and this presidency to deliver different results. And we want it to have an unprecedented outcome. We have been entrusted to conduct the first global stocktake. Our response to that must be the maximum and the highest ambition possible. And we shouldn't leave any stone unturned. So my open invitation that I have been extending to all relevant parties and stakeholders to engage in a collaborative manner, to engage with a different mindset, that compromise is going to be essential. It's going to be a catalyst and an enabler for us to be able to reach the maximum and the highest ambition GST. At the same time, I've asked for all parties to convene, to engage, to collaborate, to cooperate, and to discuss openly, and to come to the presidency with options, with recommendations, with proposals that have common ground and consensus among all parties. And what you're going to see as a reaction from us is full transparency and full inclusion. And we will move and deliver and implement what the parties reach consensus on.
The lady here in the first row, first seat.
My name is Sophie Mkwena from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. I just want to find out from the UN and the President of COP, in terms of the global stocktake, what are the sticky issues in terms of the report that you have for those who are compiling information, and how are you going to ensure that you are able to navigate perhaps the challenges that might arise?
Thank you for that question. I mean, the first thing is that this is a party-driven process. So it is for parties, countries to determine the direction that this takes. The UNFCCC Secretariat produced a synthesis report a few weeks ago, which was the culmination of 180 submissions from parties, over 40 submissions from non-state actors. And all of the elements that set out basically provide, one, a representative of where we are, and we know already that there is a massive ambition and implementation gap. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but it also highlighted areas of progress, areas of best practice, but also outlined all of the elements, the tools that parties can draw upon here in Dubai, that depending on the levels of ambition that they show, those that want to see, when we talk about a strong outcome of the GST, it has to inform the next round of NDCs. and all of the elements that's contained in a nationally determined contribution. So there are discussions amongst parties and differing views as to how prescriptive or how non-prescriptive the GST should be. So that's one area that will be up for debate over these coming days. The other is how forward-looking the GST should be, and the other view is how backward-looking it should be. And this speaks to all of the elements that are covered under the GST, whether that's finance, whether it's adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage. What we have found, certainly from the synthesis report, is that there is an imbalance between mitigation contributions and views as to how the mitigation agenda progresses versus adaptation. But within the scope of negotiations between now and the 12th, you have the different if you like, work streams. So the global goal and adaptation, there is an opportunity for parties to still put forward positions in terms of what the final product of the global goal on adaptation will be, and then how that feeds up into the GST. And the same for the mitigation work programme. So the GST will be the overarching deliverable for this COP, which will contain every single element that would traditionally be under negotiation. The question is whether parties take a top-down approach, looking at where this global stocktake, which is supposed to be that course-correcting provision within the Paris Agreement, or whether it'll be a bottom-up approach from a baseline of all of those negotiating tracks.
Ambassador?
Yeah, thank you. When we started at the beginning of this year, there was like a huge gulf between what people thought the global stocktake should be about. From some people who just wanted one line to those who wanted like a full book, a binder of what the global stocktake should say. And over the course of this year, we have really managed to bring the parties together. I think that Simon has described very well the scope of what the global stocktake is about. We have a clearer picture of what we're trying to achieve. But we, as a COP president, have been saying from the very beginning that we're focused on that 1.5 and how we keep that within reach, and how we need to use this moment to course correct, because we know fundamentally that we're not on track to achieving it. So how is this global stocktake not just going to deliver some nice words on paper, as Dr. Sultan just said, but real world impact that gets us back on track, that achieves our 1.5 degree goals? And remember, it focuses the mind. Our COP is about the next 7 years. It's about what we can do today to get us to those Paris goals of 2030. Because we can't claim that great success that we claim today from Paris if we can't show how that agreement can deliver. And if we can't achieve our 2030 goals, how are we going to achieve our 2050 goals? So it's a really critical moment in this process that we deliver the trust, we deliver the ambition, and we deliver the path that gets us there. And we can only do that by bringing everybody together and delivering a really ambitious outcome.
The lady in the green dress here, first row.
Thank you so much. It's Fifi Peters from CNBC Africa. Dr. Steele, to you, you did describe the conversations around loss and damage as challenging. And I'd just like to know how the various contributions were determined by some of the donor countries already. It is quite noticeable that the US has committed the smallest amount, and the fact that the likes of China and India, for instance, aren't amongst the list that we have received so far. So if you could just advise how we should interpret that. And also to you, Sir, Dr. Sultan, Ahead of this conference in Nairobi, the Africa Climate Finance Summit did take place. And for the first time, we did see African countries coming together, 54 nations of the African Union, in one collaborative stance, it would seem, to get greater climate justice for the continent, a continent that is the most impacted, yet responsible for the least emissions. Just your thoughts on that summit and the Nairobi Declaration that was also adopted. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I think what is significant for me, and it should be for all of us in this room, is the unprecedented nature of the response from some donor countries, not just the adoption of the recommendations coming out of the committee, which bring the fund and the funding arrangement to life, but the fact that within moments of gavelling, parties, donors willing to put close to $500 million into that fund. Pledging will continue over the course of the next 2 days with the Leaders' Summit. I believe some countries would prefer to make those statements on the grander stage of the Leaders' Summit. But the formal process of how the fund will be capitalized in a sustainable way moving forward, these are decisions that will be made by the board that can now be established now that this decision has been adopted. So there's a long road ahead. What is also clear is the scale of loss and damages globally, and to service this fund, a single extreme weather event can destroy. I take my own country of Grenada. Back in 1994, a hurricane wiped out 200%, equivalent to 200% of our GDP in a matter of hours. So when you start aggregating this up, and you start looking at all of the different climate-related losses, the scale that will be required and the mechanisms, which is why it's funding arrangements, is complex and is going to require deep engagement by all donors. So I'm certainly encouraged and welcome all contributions raised. That was an absolute surprise, pleasant surprise. But if that approach were to continue, I think it bodes well in terms of the next steps for that full operationalization process.
Allow me to answer your question by first saying thank you for asking me this question at this very important time, because I actually don't think that the Africa Climate Summit got or received its fair chance in terms of international media coverage. I did find that platform to be one very important, unique, well-equipped platform to help ascend Africa into a greener future. Why do I say that? I've engaged as part of my fact-finding mission with intensity this year on the Global South, developing countries and emerging markets. And I must say, my engagements with Africa, and in particular throughout the Africa Climate Summit, were in a big way very beneficial in helping us better shape our strategy and our set of objectives for COP28. So in a way, it was a platform that have helped catalyze the COP28 ability to better refine its plans and objectives to cater for what is really needed today, and that is an action-oriented agenda to help address the global challenge and keep 1.5 within reach. We also went to Africa well prepared and equipped with political will and support from our own leadership, and hands-on experience. Our ability to be able to couple the political will and the hands-on experience we have enabled us to go with a very special proposition to Africa, and that is the Africa Fund that we have announced and already launched and started actually deploying in Africa of $4.5 billion with 5 entities representing the UAE. The mandate of that fund is simply to replicate what Masdar have been doing over the past 17 years. Masdar would go identify a specific renewable energy opportunity. We would work with the host country on the regulatory framework or the policy that is required that will help ensure the security of that project for the investors. And we also helped, through this experience of Masdar, replicate it but scale it up. And that's why we provided a $3 billion of equity and 1.5 of catalytic funding. That is more of a concessional development funding that will help catalyze these investments. 1, 2, attract private capital, help risk mitigate, and ensure that the private capital is safe and secure by providing them the necessary assurances through this fund. This fund, because it already started deploying, I can comfortably tell you, we started with 4.5. In 3 years, this is not going to be less than $25 billion. Why? There is a huge set of opportunities across Africa. What is required is a creative mind that will help blend finance between equity and development to ensure that we provide the necessary scale in terms of financing and to deploy large-scale technology to help meet the growing energy needs in Africa, while also helping develop a new economic development program in these countries, creating jobs, attracting industries, capacity building, transferring knowledge and technology, ensuring that we start manufacturing some of these products that are necessarily needed to ensure the resilience of supply in these different markets. So it's the whole value chain of business that we cater for through this fund. And I must say, what President Ruto have been able to do over the past few years, and in particular when it comes to climate action, is unprecedented, and we very much appreciate his effort.
Thank you. If I may elaborate also on the loss and damage question as well, because needs is exactly the right question to ask. Is what exactly are we trying to fund? I think within the scope, the complexity that we're working on, this is something that's never been done before. This is fundamentally new, and it fundamentally needed an agile approach, something that can grow over time, something that can receive funds from a broad variety of sources, and something that fundamentally works towards recovering development losses while supporting countries in also anticipating losses to come, right? So it's both the rapid and the slow onset. It's economic and non-economic losses, such as loss of culture, which is not necessarily something you can quantify. And in that sense, I think that one of the areas that's particularly interesting is how the fund actually functions with the broader funding arrangements, but also with the broader outcomes that we need to come up with in the negotiations outcomes at this COP. And that includes operationalization of the Santiago network, which provides technical assistance then to developing countries to be able to deal with losses and damages. It includes broader agreements beyond loss and damage, including adopting a GGA framework. You can build resilience and ensure that countries are building adaptive capacity, but more able to respond and adapt to climate impacts, preserving lives and livelihoods. And this is where both the action that we're achieving, the action agenda of the COP, and the policies that we're setting that enable countries to respond are important. The mitigation outcomes are critically important as well, and so you're minimizing the risks, of course, of loss and damage by also not taking away development gains from that side. So how is it that you can have a just transition in this place? This COP will have the adoption of a just transition work program. So we look at for the first time how it is that we can ensure that we're keeping sustainable development also at the heart of our climate action and poverty eradication at the heart of that as well. There are a number of other agenda items that I think will all support this, but that also speaks to the question on areas to the need further deliberation under the global stocktake, for lack of a better term. I would encourage everyone to really watch the high-level events that we will have on the global stocktake tomorrow and the day after. Here we'll have a number of heads of state and government that come forward to share their vision of where they think we need to be by 2030 and how it is we're going to get there. I'd really encourage you to pay close attention so that we can capture key messages from that and build from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to finish here. There are other commitments waiting. So thank you very much again. And thanks once again for your patience. There will be daily updates from the presidency. So there are 2 slots every day, 9:30, 1:30. Please take a look at the screens and you will see what time is working. Let me just give you a few numbers because we all know it's a record participation. Let me just give you the big numbers, and you can come to me then and I give you the details. So we have 52,081 delegates from parties, 19,132 observers, 3,976 media. Then there's a category host country, global climate action, and virtual participation. In total is about 9,000. That adds up to 84,000 plus security, technical staff, volunteers. The total number at the moment, 104,652 from this afternoon, 4 p.m. Thank you and see you soon.